Rain pressed the settlement into silence, soaking weeds that climbed rusted trucks and a sagging farmhouse at the road's bend. The alien officers arrived, as if the place existed for their boots alone, tall frames gleaming beneath layered armor, voices translated into clipped contempt. They called the humans auxiliaries, a word that tasted like leash. Marines stood nearby in mud-dark fatigues, helmets scarred, rifles slung, eyes forward. Captain Mara Vance watched without comment, jaw set, posture immaculate. She had learned that silence traveled farther than protest. Commander Kelser paced before a map projected from his wrist, tapping routes with a talon. "Your patrols wander," he said, not looking at Vance. "You lack initiative." He dismissed a reply with a wave, turning instead to his aides, who laughed softly. The laughter carried, and Vance felt it land on her people like grit. Corporal Reyes shifted his weight, then stilled when she glanced back. Discipline held, not because they were meek, but because they were precise. The occupation had taught the aliens that humans endured. It had not taught them why. Kelser's doctrine favored dominance, censors spectacle. He trusted shields more than angles, speed more than patience. He announced new schedules aloud, confident that fear would substitute for secrecy. "Observe," he said, gesturing toward the open fields. "Nothing moves without my knowing." Vance studied the grass bending under rain and said nothing. Behind her, Sergeant Amani whispered, "They're getting sloppy." Vance nodded once. Sloppiness was a language humans spoke fluently, especially when others mistook restraint for weakness. She remembered the briefing, the thin smile of a lieutenant who never raised his voice, the single phrase passed down the chain. "Hold until told." Somewhere beyond the hedgerows, that order had already settled into the earth. Kelser approached, peering into Vance's face as if searching for an animal's tail. "You will accompany us," he said. "You will learn." His gaze flicked to the Marines, lingering on old rifles and worn kit. "These tools belong in museums." Vance met his eyes at last. "They work," she said. The translator softened her tone. The meaning did not soften. The patrol moved out. Aliens clustered near the farmhouse, armor catching gray light, command ranks unconcerned with cover. Humans fanned wider, quieter, spacing instinctive. Vance marked angles, distances, habits. She saw how often Kelser returned to the same spot to speak, how aides mirrored him, how arrogance bred patterns. When an alien shoved Reyes aside to clear a sight line, Vance's hand twitched, then stilled. Time was a tool, too. As they halted, rain eased to a mist. Kelser lifted his chin, savoring the view. "See," he said. "Compliance." Vance keyed her mic once, a sound like breath. Far away, unseen, someone answered by settling deeper into green, already counting heartbeats. Vance did not look back when the aliens resumed talking. She felt the shift ripple through her platoon, a subtle tightening, breath synchronized, choices narrowed. Orders remained unspoken, because trust made speech unnecessary. Kelser traced routes again, repeating himself, pleased with the sound of command. He never noticed the quiet spreading, the way rain erased footprints, the way humans learned landscapes until they became memory. Vance imagined the map dissolving, lines replaced by angles and wind. She thought of patience, of waiting being in action. When Kelser smiled, certain of lessons taught, Vance allowed herself a single certainty in return. The lesson about to be learned would travel farther than his voice. Somewhere beyond sight, preparation settled like stone, and the rain carried it, patient and inevitable, toward a moment already chosen by human hands and steadied nerves. Lieutenant Hale lay buried in green, the world reduced to breath and pressure. The ghillie suit dissolved his outline into wet leaves and shadow, fibers threaded with mud and patience. He had been here since before dawn, motionless enough that insects accepted him. The rifle rested on its bipod, metal cool, scope capped until needed. Hale's heartbeat slowed to a metronome he could ignore, training folding fear into function. Through a narrow slit of vision, the settlement unfolded as geometry. Distances were measured in memorized clicks, wind read by grass tips and drifting mist. Alien armor glinted when they shifted, bright mistakes against a dull palette. Sensors hummed faintly, searching for heat, motion, signals. Hale offered none. He was a subtraction, an absence where expectation failed. The aliens believed dominance announced itself. Hale knew power preferred quiet. He listened to command traffic filtered through bone conduction audio, fragments translated and tagged. Arrogance came through even scrambled. Patrol routes repeated. Officers clustered. A name surfaced, ranked high, careless in habit. Hale logged it without emotion, because emotion wasted time. He remembered instructors who taught waiting as labor, who praised stillness more than speed. They had taught him to become weather. Hours earlier, Captain Vance's voice had been a single syllable in his ear, permission shaped like trust. Hale had acknowledged with a click and nothing more. Words invited doubt. Certainty required none. Now he watched her below, posture composed, anger banked. He cataloged her angles and the Marine's spacing, the way they corrected without signals. Humans moved like a system that trusted itself. Rain thinned, then stopped. The field breathed out. Hale adjusted for the change, a fraction of a fraction. The officer he tracked stepped into the open again, talons drumming as he spoke. Hale noted the repetition, the habit of stopping where lines converged. He waited for the bodyguard to shift, for the aide to lean, for the wind to settle. Waiting was not emptiness. It was choice stacked upon choice. The rifle scope came alive, the world narrowing to a circle edged in black. Hale dialed, checked, paused. He felt the ground through his chest, the weight of the planet lending steadiness. He thought of home only as procedure, of distance only as math. If he failed, others would adjust. If he succeeded, nothing would change immediately, and that was the point. A murmur crossed the channel. New orders forming, punishment discussed. Hale's jaw tightened once, then relaxed. He did not rush. He let the officer finish speaking. Let confidence bloom unchecked. When the wind stilled and the moment aligned, Hale exhaled halfway and held. The world waited with him, balanced on a decision already made, inviting the next breath to become history. He stayed still as voices below shifted tone, curiosity edging fear. Shields flared briefly, then dimmed, confidence reasserting itself. Hale marked the pattern and saved it, another lesson filed away. He thought of the Marines who would walk out of this field later, boots muddy, faces blank alive. He thought of the officer's smile and how it rested on ignorance. The rifle waited without urging, machinery honest in its demands. Hale allowed himself one narrow focus, excluding everything that did not matter. Time compressed to a thin line he could step across when ready. Until then, he remained invisible, a human answer to alien certainty, poised between restraint and action, knowing the moment would come because arrogance always returned to the same place. He breathed, counted, and waited, trusting discipline over impulse, confident that patience, once again, would prove deadlier than haste for everyone watching below. Rain lashed against the corrugated roofs of the abandoned settlement, a percussive rhythm beneath the growl of thunder. Inside the gutted farmhouse, Sergeant Kane adjusted the scope of his rifle, its lens reflecting a flicker of alien light far across the valley. The alien officers had arrived that morning, their ships slicing through the clouds like blades. The humans had been ordered to stand down, to observe and comply, while their supposed allies established dominance over the planet they claimed to protect. Kane had complied, until he saw what compliance meant. The alien command structure operated with precision and disdain. They called humanity primitive auxiliaries, useful for terrain reconnaissance and menial tasks. To the humans, the aliens' technology was dazzling. Weapons that hummed with plasma light, armor that shifted color like oil on water. But behind every display of superiority lay contempt. The first insult had been verbal. The second, a physical shove during a joint briefing. The third, Kane would never forget. An alien captain executed one of his men for insubordination after a simple communication delay. The captain had smiled, cold and reptilian, as if disciplining livestock. Kane hadn't spoken after that. He didn't trust his voice not to betray the storm inside him. He had led men through 3 wars, survived ambushes and orbital strikes. But this, the humiliation of being dismissed as less than sentient, cut deeper than any wound. He had spent days observing, cataloging their patrols, understanding their arrogance. They never looked down when they passed human-held zones. They assumed submission was instinct. From his position near the decayed barn, Kane peered through the mist. His spotter, Corporal Ruiz, crouched beside him, silent but alert. Ruiz had lost a brother during the disciplinary demonstration. His jaw was tight, his breathing steady, though anger simmered in his eyes. "Movement, North Ridge," Ruiz murmured. Kane adjusted the dial. 3 alien officers advanced with a contingent of drones, their armor faintly pulsing blue. They moved with mechanical grace, scanning the landscape as though surveying conquered land. "Command said to hold position," Ruiz said after a moment, voice low but strained. Kane didn't reply. He tracked the lead officer, the one with the crimson insignia. The captain, the murderer. Through the scope, the alien's elongated features came into sharp relief, eyes glimmering like obsidian mirrors. The creature gestured arrogantly toward the human settlement below, laughing with another officer. Kane could almost read his expression. "Look how small they are." His finger rested on the trigger guard, trembling only slightly. He wasn't impulsive by nature, but something in that gesture, the effortless cruelty, cracked his restraint. He thought of the Marines under his command, of the humans who believed the aliens came as partners, not masters. "We don't start wars," his old instructor used to say. "We finish the ones others bring to us." Ruiz's voice broke the silence. "Sergeant, if you pull that trigger, it's open war." Kane exhaled slowly, the breath cold in the humid air. "Then it starts here," he said. The rifle's report shattered the valley stillness. A flash of light, a sound like distant thunder, and the alien captain's body crumpled to the ground. The other officers froze, confusion twisting into fury. Drones swarmed into formation, their optics scanning wildly, searching for the source. Kane already knew he wouldn't stay. He and Ruiz melted into the tall grass, their ghillie suits merging with the landscape. As they retreated toward the forest's edge, Ruiz glanced back once. "You think they'll know who did it?" Kane gave a grim half-smile. "They'll learn what it means to underestimate humans." Behind them, alarms wailed. In the distance, alien engines ignited, painting the clouds with violet fire. Kane didn't look back. For the first time since the occupation began, the balance of fear had shifted. By nightfall, the settlement felt different, as if the land itself had exhaled after holding its breath. Alien patrols moved slower now, formations wider, shields flaring at every sound. Captain Mara Vance watched from a broken window, helmet tucked under her arm, rainwater dripping from the eaves. No one celebrated. The silence was deliberate, heavy with understanding. The aliens demanded answers that never came. Scans found no heat signature, no lingering trace. Their command channels buzzed with clipped frustration, confidence eroding into suspicion. Officers who once stood tall now avoided open ground, glancing toward tree lines they had previously ignored. The death of one commander had not crippled them, but it had unsettled something fundamental. They had believed superiority was absolute. Now it felt conditional. Lieutenant Hale was already gone, leaving behind nothing but flattened grass and a memory of stillness. Vance knew better than to ask where he would surface next. Snipers were not heroes in speeches. They were variables, reminders that control could be contested. She gathered her Marines, issuing new patrol routes with alien observers, listening more than speaking. When one officer began to object, he stopped himself, mandibles tightening, and nodded instead. Reyes caught Vance's eye as they moved out. There was no grin, no bravado, only a steadier set to his shoulders. The Marines walked as they always had, rifles low, spacing clean, but now the air around them carried weight. Respect, she realized, was not granted by treaties or technology. It arrived quietly on consequences. At an alien command post beyond the hills, Kelser's superiors reviewed fragmented data feeds. They replayed the moment again and again, searching for drama that was not there. No warning, no challenge, just absence followed by death. A senior officer finally spoke, voice measured. Human combat, doctrine prioritizes patience and precision. Adjust accordingly. It was the closest thing to an admission any of them would make. Orders changed. Human recommendations were no longer overridden by default. Joint operations placed Marines on equal footing, their experience treated as asset rather than inconvenience. The occupation did not end, but its tone shifted, like a blade lowered an inch from the throat. Vance felt it in briefings, in a way aliens waited before speaking, in the pauses that replaced mockery. That night, as clouds thinned and stars broke through, Vance stepped outside alone. The field lay quiet, grass bent where boots and armor had passed. Somewhere out there, Hale would be cleaning his rifle, already folding the day into memory. She thought of how little he would say about it, how much restraint defined them all. Humans did not need to be feared, she decided. They needed to be understood, and misunderstanding had finally become costly. An alien lieutenant approached, stopping a respectful distance away. "Captain," it said after a pause, choosing the title carefully. "Your assessment of terrain routes was accurate." Vance inclined her head, accepting the words without warmth or hostility. The alien hesitated, then turned back toward its post. As the night settled, the settlement returned to its uneasy calm. Rusted trucks slept beneath starlight, and the farmhouse creaked softly in the cooling air. Vance allowed herself one measured breath. The message had been sent, not with speeches or threats, but with discipline applied at the right moment. Tomorrow would bring new negotiations, new tests, but one truth now stood uncontested. Humans did not need to announce their strength. They demonstrated it once precisely, and let the silence afterward do the rest. In that quiet space, the stars seemed to listen, waiting to see what humans would do next.